Cover Up, Chapter 24, Game Over. It took them several minutes to work their way to the massive interview room because security checkpoints had been set up every 10 yards, or so it seemed along the hallway. Kelleher was waiting for them at the back of the room. "Where's Tamara?" Susan Carroll asked. "She went straight to the locker room," he said. "She's going to write about the HGH-5, and none of them are going to be brought in here, that's for sure." "You think they'll say anything?" Stevie asked. "No, but sometimes a column about people not saying anything is just as good." "Bobby, we need to talk. Alone," Susan Carroll said. "That might be difficult right now," Kelleher said. He pointed to the back of the corner of the room. Most of the media people pouring in were trying to find seats close to the front. There had to be at least 50 camera crews set up on a riser that was 2/3 of the way in the back of the room. They got as far away from other people as they could. "What's up?" Kelleher said. "We've got Meeker nailed," Susan Carroll said. "Well, I thought you nailed him pretty good this morning." They both shook their heads emphatically. "No, really nailed," Susan Carroll said. She took the tiny tape out of her pocket and held it up for Kelleher to see. "On this tape, we've got Meeker and Mike Shoup talking about Eddie's benching, and more important, Meeker admits to paying off the head of the lab to say there was a problem with the testing and that the documents we have aren't valid." Kelleher's mouth was hanging open. "How? We'll tell you the whole thing later," Stevie said before Susan Carroll could start to answer. "I think right now we need to let Meeker and the commissioner know we have the tape." Kelleher nodded. "Is that the only copy?" he asked. They nodded. "Okay, then we need to get copies made right away." He paused, clearly trying to decide what to do. Then he snapped his fingers. "Okay, my column is going to be on all of this anyway. It's the only story, especially with what you've got going here. I'm going to take the tape upstairs to the media work area, listen to it, and see if I can make copies. Someone must have a dual tape recorder. A lot of guys use these micro tapes. Stevie, you're going to go to the Dreams' locker room. Meeker will be there taking bows. When you get an opening, tell him exactly what you've got." "What if other people are listening? Don't worry about it. It's already after 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and we're the only ones with the tape. Everyone's going to have to write off our stories. In fact, make sure there are people around. Who knows what Meeker may do when he hears you've got him." "I'm ready for him," Stevie said. "Yeah, well, keep your cool, slugger," Kelleher said. "You aren't in there to fight, you're in there to report. If he's crazy enough to take a swing at you, you step out of the way, let others intervene, and report it that way. You understand?" "Yes," Stevie said, knowing Kelleher was right. "Susan Carroll, I'm going to get you to Joe Brown, who can take you to Commissioner Goodell. He should know about this, and we need a response, even if it's a no comment." "What about Eddie?" Susan Carroll asked. "Eddie will be in there. He's going to be asked about the first half benching. So will Kaplow. I'll try to be back in time to see what they say. Worst comes to worst, we'll call Eddie later on his cell and tell him what happened and get a comment from him that way. Okay, let's meet back in the main press box and decide what we need when we've got all this." He paused and looked at them both. "Are you sure you've got this right?" he said. "We're sure. Go listen." Kelleher nodded. "You're right. Stevie, you need to get moving to the locker room. It's a long walk from here. Look for Tamara when you get there." Stevie had to wait behind a barricade with other media members while the triumphant Dreams came through their tunnel following the award ceremony that just ended on the field. He spotted Brennan but couldn't catch his eye. Once all the Dreams had gone by, security people pulled the barricade back and media began charging towards the victors' locker room. Stevie hung back, not wanting to get whacked in the head by a stampeding cameraman. He walked in a couple minutes later and saw complete bedlam. Champagne was being sprayed everywhere. Players were pouring champagne, beer, anything they could get their hands on their own heads, on the heads of the media, on any heads they could find. Eddie Brennan, Troy Slade, and Skylar Kaplow were being led by security and NFL personnel out the door to be taken to the interview room. The losers went first, and the winners were on the field for the award ceremony. Brennan spotted Stevie and said something to one of the NFL people and sprinted over to him. "Can you believe it?" he said. "Did you see? We ran ED's special. Kaplow is actually upset." "Just like in high school," Stevie said, and Brennan laughed. "Eddie, we've got a tape," Stevie said, shouting to be heard, even though he was talking right in Brennan's ear. "We've got Meeker on tape, talking about the whole conspiracy. We've got him, Eddie." You're sure? 100%. Brennan let out a whoop and hugged Stevie, drenching him in sweat and champagne. My God, he said, what started as the worst day of my life may just end about to be one of the best. Except the O-line guys shouldn't have played. He sobered for a second. You're right, but ruining this for Meeker helps a lot. He was gone then, pulled away by someone in a blue blazer. People waiting for you on the golf cart, Eddie, he said. Talk to you later, Brennan said as he left. Stevie took in the locker room scene for a moment. He spotted Tamara in a corner with several other writers talking to Bill Bryant. He decided not to interrupt. You're looking for someone specific? He asked a helpful person wearing an NFL public relations credential. Meeker, Stevie said. All the way in the back, he said. Stevie squared his shoulders and walked through the locker room, getting sprayed as he went. Not surprisingly, Meeker was surrounded by cameras, tape recorders, and notebooks. Even in the chaos, he could hear Meeker clearly. This is the last time I'm going to say this. All the questions raised by that story will be answered in the next day or two. The people who wrote it up will end up apologizing to us, or they can apologize to our lawyers. We've done nothing wrong. I don't think that's true, Stevie said, shouting to be heard. Almost by magic, the cameras in front of him seemed to pull back, giving him a clear path to Meeker, who was still holding the Lombardi trophy. Meeker's face turned into an angry snarl when he saw Stevie. Here's one of the reporters who got duped into writing a story that's 100% wrong, he said. Why don't you ask him about it? Stevie noticed several cameras turned in his direction. He was now pouring sweat, or maybe it was champagne. I came down here to give you a chance to comment on the story we're writing for tomorrow, he said. Dreams win the Super Bowl? Kid reporters exposed as fools? Meeker asked. Not quite, Stevie said. More like, Harold acquires tape of Meeker explaining the cover-up plot to Mike Shoup of US TV. Would you like to comment? Meeker stared at him for a second. You're a liar. We'll find out soon who the liar is, Stevie said. For a moment, he thought Meeker was going to lunge at him. There's no way you have a tape, Meeker said, his voice now shaking. Shoup and I were the only ones in that room. He stopped, realizing what he had said. The cameras were now turned in his direction. Meeker's voice was getting very high-pitched. I met with Shoup to discuss my interview today. You all saw it. That's what it was. The kid is bluffing. Fine, Stevie said. If that's your comment, I've got a story to write. Get him out! Meeker screamed. Get him out of my locker room right now! Don't worry, little Donnie, Stevie said, feeling very secure now. I'm leaving. I've got all I need. Stevie could hear Meeker still screaming, on camera, no doubt, as he turned and walked away. Susan Carroll and Kelleher were already writing when Stevie returned to the main press box. There was plenty of room to work, since a lot of the other writers had opted to write from the downstairs workroom. I just thought I should get us all started since it's so late, Susan Carroll said. Kelleher filled him in on the plan. He had transcribed the key parts of the tape. Never heard anything like it in my life, and sent it to the paper. He was writing a column calling for the league to force Meeker to sell the team. They won't call the game a forfeit, so the win stands, he said, but Goodell told Susan Carroll that if it was all true, the other owners could vote to compel Meeker to sell the team. Tamara returned just after Stevie, and they brought her up to date, too. Just beyond amazing, she said, shaking her head. Once Stevie and Susan Carroll started writing, she sat at the computer. He made suggestions over her shoulder. Stevie understood the term, a story that writes itself. Kelleher had told him just to write and not worry about length. They wrote close to 3,000 words. Kelleher, who finished his column just as they were wrapping it up, read it through quickly before they sent it to the Herald. Unbelievable, Kelleher kept saying. I thought New Orleans was unbelievable. This is beyond that. And the best part is, you've got 'em cold. This story almost doesn't need to be lawyered. It's right there on tape. He folded his arms and looked at the two of them. Okay, now tell me just how you got this tape, he said. Susan Carroll smiled. We have to protect our source on this, Bobby. Kelleher's eyes narrowed. Come on, just tell me enough so I can tell the lawyers that I'm completely sure it's legit. Dude, it's all good, Stevie said, smiling. Our favorite dude came through, okay? Bobby looked at them for a minute, then smiled. If you're saying what I think you're saying, don't tell me any more, he said. It will all be too strange for me to understand anyways. works for us, Susan Carroll said, flashing the smile. Stevie had almost forgotten what it looked like. It had been so long. They still had to answer some questions from the lawyer and from the editors, but it was all pretty basic. It was hard to argue with a recorded confession. It was well after 1 a.m. by the time they packed up their computers and walked out of the press box. Tamara had called Mark Mask, who was working downstairs, to alert him to the Herald story which she had referred to in her column, "Scooped by children again." She said, laughing. They walked back to the hotel with snow falling steadily. The streets were still crowded, mostly with Dreams fans celebrating their victory. "The amazing thing is, none of these people care their team won a tainted Super Bowl," Tamara said. "None of them care the team owner's an incredible sleazebag." Bobby nodded. "You could write a million stories like the one you guys wrote tonight, and most fans will still shrug and say, 'Yeah, but we won.'" "So why bother?" Stevie said. "Because the truth matters," Kelleher said. "The truth will bring bad guys down. Meeker is going down. And the players will be penalized. And maybe other players won't think they can get away with cheating in the future. The truth always matters." They contemplated that and what lay ahead as they walked. The story would take on a life of its own now, one with far-reaching ramifications, but Stevie and Susan Carroll wouldn't be on the front lines of it anymore. They were going home. Bobby and Tamara left Stevie and Susan Carroll alone to say goodbye in front of the Marriott. Susan Carroll was going to take a cab back to the Canterbury. She had a 7 a.m. flight. "You going to be okay on 4 hours sleep?" Stevie asked. "I'll be fine. I sleep well in airplanes," she said. He was trying to figure out what to say or do next. After spending so much time together, it was strange to think he wouldn't see her tomorrow. "Stephen Richmond Thomas," she said finally, "have you not yet learned how to kiss your girlfriend goodbye?" "Are you really my girlfriend?" he asked. "It's not like we see each other that often. There must be other guys at home." "And plenty of girls in Philadelphia," she said. "Do you want me to be your girlfriend?" "Oh, yeah," he said. "Oh, yeah." He leaned forward, standing on his toes just a little to kiss her, but she had a silly grin on her face. "What?" he said. "You know, Jamie Whitsitt did turn out to be a much better guy than you gave him credit for." "You want to call him?" he said. "I'm sure you got to sell." But he had to stop. He had to stop at that point because she was kissing him. He put his arms around her, not really caring about all the people walking in and out of the hotel, and held her for quite a while. "Wow," Susan Carroll said. "Pretty good for someone so young." "Yeah, 14 isn't so bad." They still had their arms around each other. "I know," she said. "I think you've got great growth potential." He laughed. "When will I see you?" he said. "Duke is playing at Temple in 2 weeks," she said. "Maybe I'll come for the game." "Bad idea," he said. "Why?" she said, a surprised look on her face. "You like Duke. And if we're both at the game, there's bound to be trouble of some kind." "We are kind of a jinx, aren't we?" "Yep. Basketball, tennis, football. What sport shall we ruin next?" "How do you feel about baseball?" she asked. "No, I like baseball. And we can't wreck swimming either." "Oh, hey, think of the damage we could do at the Olympics." They both laughed for a long time, hanging onto each other a little crazily, the snow swirling around them. After a while, Susan Carroll said, "So I shouldn't come to Philly for the game?" Stevie kissed her again. "Of course you should," he said. "Trouble is what we do." "And we do it well, don't we?" We sure do, Scarlett. We sure do." The end.